Though I don't totally hate this movie, I'm not super in love with it, and I really do miss Zack Snyder. Okay, you guys, I just got back from watching The Flash. I would have seen it a few days before now, but I was out of town visiting with my brothers, and my voice has finally come back. This is the best it has sounded since I filmed the review for Transformers. I lost my voice for more than a week. That was annoying, especially being around my brothers, and I couldn't talk as much as I wanted to. Anyway, okay, The Flash. I was going to go see it Tuesday, but I got home earlier than I thought I would be getting home, and I decided that is a scene from Justice League. I don't know why that picture of Ben Affleck's Batman was in the IMDb pictures for The Flash, because that was not a scene from the movie. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I got back earlier than I expected. I went to go see The Flash. That's the other Flash, isn't it? That other guy it was showing. Is that... I didn't vet all these pictures. I just downloaded a bunch of pictures, and that other Flash it was showing looks like maybe the guy from the TV show. Okay, anyway, what was I saying? Oh, I went to go see The Flash earlier than I was going to go see it Tuesday. I went to go see it Saturday night. It's pretty late Saturday night, so and I actually took a crap ton of notes, you guys. The theater that I was in was almost completely full. The audience was very engaged, very lively audience. There was a lot of laughter. And I was one of the people that was laughing at some of the scenes, because there was a bit of comedy in here that landed pretty well. Some of the scenes between the two Barrys were pretty funny, but then there were also moments where it just didn't work and it felt a bit too goofy. Now that's heading into con territory, so I'm going to rein in a little bit from that and just try to focus on pros first. I had thought about leading with this comment as my opening, that the early access gushing that we were hearing about surrounding this film, that feels like a bit of false advertising. This movie, it's not the worst comic book movie I've ever seen, but there were certainly things about it that didn't make it feel as complete or as well-rounded of a package as some of the other comic book movies we've gotten, specifically some of the other DC comic book movies we've gotten, like Wonder Woman and Zack Snyder's Justice League and Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. I thought that was actually a really decent film. There are other DC movies Shazam came out this year. What else? Oh, there was something I was just thinking about. Shazam and something else. Black Adam. Okay, compared to Shazam and Black Adam, this is the superior movie, in my opinion. I felt pretty meh about Black Adam. It's okay. It's all right. I didn't hate it, but wasn't that great. I felt that way about Shazam. I feel like this is a stronger movie, specifically with regard to the human element, the emotional aspects to it that are covered in here. And let me just go through my notes. So in preparation for watching this, a few weeks ago, I watched the Flashpoint Paradox, the cartoon, the animated movie. And so there was stuff in here that they showed that didn't surprise me. Like I understood what was happening, and I figured I would guess how things were going to end up, and it was fairly accurate. This doesn't follow that specifically, but the basic concept is the same. He goes back in time to save his mother, and the ramifications of that are very real and very terrible. That's the basic premise of the Flashpoint Paradox. That's also the premise of this movie. I like time travel stuff. I like going back in time, sort of, stories and stuff like that. So I liked that about this. I also liked that we had the two Barrys together. The Barry that we know from the previous movies, he's like in his mid to late 20s now. And when he goes back and he meets up with young Barry is this idiotic, goofy, stupid kid. He's 18 years old and he acts completely imbecilic sometimes, but he's also pretty funny. He does some pretty funny, crazy stuff. Some other stuff that I like, the Batmobile that it was showing. There's a scene in the beginning where Ben Affleck, and I just want to get this right out of the way. This is going to be a review that focuses on spoilers, because some of the issues I have with this movie, I feel like I need to, or I want to get into the nitty gritty of why I'm a little aggravated by some of the stuff. Anyway, The cool bat bike in the beginning, it has 2 separate wheels. That was kind of neat. That was a new design. I had originally thought when I saw the trailer and I saw the bat bike, I saw it from the back in the trailer, and I was thinking that maybe we were going to see Christian Bale in it. No, it's not. It's Ben Affleck's Batman riding on that thing, and it's got a cool new design with the wheels, and they kind of operate separately, or there's a picture of it in here. I thought that was cool. Cool enough that I wrote it down. I like the effects of the Flash. The speed effects are pretty well done. The Quicksilver, I wrote down Quicksilver effect, and by that I just mean, you know how in the X-Men movies with Quicksilver, when it would show him doing his thing and all this stuff was going in slow-mo. That happens quite a bit in here. There's a scene at the very beginning involving some babies that are in peril that reminded me of those scenes with Quicksilver in some of the X-Men movies. I liked that. Something I meant to mention, but I forgot to, this was in my notes. I remember seeing, before I went to go watch the movie, I had seen some videos circulating around on YouTube where they were criticizing certain aspects of the CGI in here, and there were some issues with CGI, but one of the things that I noticed they were focusing on had to do with the portrayal of Henry Cavill's Superman, and the narrative seemed to be that, they were intentionally trying to make him look bad, or they were doing such and such, or it was basically very downcast on this particular imagery that was shown. And honestly, after having seen the film, I am getting the sense that some of the narrative surrounding the negative commentary about this film feels to just be ginned up just for the sake of it, not necessarily because it's deserved. And I'm specifically referring to that particular instance with the Henry Cavill CGI. And the reason that it looked wonky is not because the CGI was just crappy or they were intentionally trying to make something look bad. It was because of where this particular scene was taking place. It happened to take place in this area where when the berries go and they're turning back time and they can look around them and they can see all the different timelines. Everything around them has that look to it because they're looking at things through a totally different lens than a normal one. So I had written in my notes something about that criticism of the Superman CGI. I disagree. And I meant to put that in, and for whatever reason, I think that note might have accidentally gotten deleted when I was trying to organize them, but I just wanted to jump back in and mention that. Okay, back to the video. There was a quote that I really, really liked in here as well, and I wrote it down to the best of my ability. And it was when he's talking with Bruce Wayne about how he wants to go back and fix things. Basically, that was look at the wheels. That was the gist of the conversation. And Bruce Wayne says to him, "These scars we have, basically these emotional scars that they have," he said, "these scars we have make us who we are. They aren't meant to be fixed. And there's nothing about you that needs to be fixed." I like that. I thought that was very well written advice and commentary. And I liked that particular conversation between them. There were some various scenes between people, especially like between the two Barrys and between Barry and his mother, that were very touching. I kid you not, you guys, there was a scene at the end that I got a bit choked up about. And dude sitting next to me, I feel like he kind of started getting a little bit weepy too. That scene was very well done. It was very touching, very, very sad. To me, it was sad, and I liked how it played out. And also, Ezra Miller, I've always liked him as the Flash, and last year I was really looking forward to this movie, and then more and more stuff was coming out about him and all the crap he was getting into, and it was just like, what the hell, dude? You know, you are just like, you are completely off your chain. You need to get yourself straightened out. And I still really don't understand, with all the legal troubles this guy has been in, why he was kept for this film. But at the same time, I do, because from what I understand, this thing had already been pretty much filmed. They had thrown a crap ton of money at it, and they weren't about to just completely cut their losses. So they moved forward with it. Now, I don't know how much of the issue with Ezra Miller is going to damage this film at the box office, or if it's just going to be superhero fatigue. But from what I understand, this movie is underperforming, and I don't feel like it's going to do very well in the end. I guess we'll see. I might be wrong, but that has nothing to do with why did I get off on that tangent? Anyway, whatever. Okay. Touching scenes between Barry and his mother. Comedy. Some of the comedy, like I said, doesn't work as well as others, but one thing, I know what I was getting ready to say. Ezra Miller, I was getting ready to talk about his acting. There were parts in here where he was a little bit too goofy and too ridiculous, but there were also some parts in here where he tapped into the emotional aspect, the emotional element pretty well, very convincing. And there were a lot of times where I was able to shut my brain off from the insanity of his real life and appreciate his performance in here. It's not often that I can do that when there's an actor that is completely off the rails with their personal life and the things that they do, the way that they behave. Many times it's very difficult for me to separate my opinions and viewpoints about them regarding those sorts of things from their performance. It doesn't happen often. It was able to happen a little bit more easily in here, maybe because I've always liked him as the Flash before he started behaving like a complete idiot. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but I felt like he did a decent job in here. His comedic timing was pretty funny. Something else I liked in here was Michael Keaton's Batman. He was pretty badass in some scenes, so I feel like a lot of those were CGI and not necessarily really him, obviously. Something else I liked about Keaton was the fact that he was utilized pretty well. He was in here quite a lot. I mean, he doesn't show up until well into the film, but once he does show up, he has a persistent presence. He's in here a lot. He plays a pretty important role. However, in the end, it does feel like he's just in here just kind of like as a callback fan servicey, please the fan type thing, which is something that I feel about the various other things that happen in here, which I'll say that for the con stuff. The comedy in here, like I said, some of it ties into dialogue that was happening, callback references to other alternate things from our own reality. You'll know what I'm talking about when you get to it. And of course, it ties into the whole multiverse thing, because when he goes and he turns back time, he has changed so much. And so the reality that he finds himself in has alternate things that have happened. Think Last Action Hero, and Sylvester Stallone was Terminator in Last Action Hero. Think that sort of change or switch up along those lines. When the new Barry becomes the Flash, something that I noticed in the beginning is that he runs differently than old Barry. And I don't know if that was like an attempt to address some of the criticisms Barry has had or Ezra Miller has had for the way he runs. He does have a very distinct running style. I actually like it. I think it fits pretty well with the Flash character. New Barry ran differently until like towards the end. Then he seemed to run pretty much the same as our Barry. Anyway, okay. Some people that I noticed when I'm tying back to the alternate references that they are talking about, some people next to me, they didn't get what some of these references were. So I explained very quickly what that was all about. And for reference, that particular thing that was talked about or mentioned was regarding Back to the Future. That's just one of different things. What else? Oh, yes. So the character of Barry Allen in this movie, he has as I saw another reviewer point out, he has a bit of a character arc in here. So the Barry that we know, we never really got a character arc with him. He just was Barry. He's always been this way. But in this movie, because there's new Barry who hasn't had his powers, then he gets his powers, and then we see his transformation as a person, we do finally end up seeing a character arc with at least a version of Barry. Not really the same as our Barry, because this Barry has lived a totally different life. His life experiences don't match our Barry's life experiences. So his character arc, not necessarily the same type of character arc that our Barry would have had if we ever saw one for him in any of the previous movies. Something that another reviewer pointed out, which I agree with, is despite some shaky CGI in here, the CGI with the two Barrys together worked pretty well. It was so seamless, you really did honestly feel like you were watching two separate people. Even though you knew it was the same actor playing just two separate parts, it felt like two separate people. So I thought that was pretty well done. There is one post-credit scene at the very, very end. Even after the lights came on in the theater, the credits are still rolling. the post-credit scene happens at the very end, even with lights on, in my theater anyway. So yeah, those are a lot of the pros I had. Now I'm going to touch a little bit on the cons. And as I already mentioned, sometimes things just felt a little bit too goofy and silly. And I was thinking, when those moments happened, that was when I missed Zack Snyder the most. Now, some people have had issues with Zack Snyder's vision for the DC universe. I have always liked his vision. The stuff that he tapped into for the characters that he portrayed on screen, that was something that appeals to me much more than a lot of the more lighthearted, goofy comedy sort of storylines that we get with many of the Marvel movies as of late. So when these goofy, crazy moments were happening, and while I did enjoy a lot of the comedy, when it got a bit over the top and ridiculous and like, oh, okay, I was like, man, I really miss Zack Snyder. And I think he could have done a really good job with telling us a solid, gritty Flash movie, and yet with the levity that was needed, because we got that already in the other movies where Flash was present. Some other things that were cons for me, certain things that happened that didn't make any sense. Continuity issues, like when Barry first gets his power and he's been severely ill, he heals almost immediately. Then there's a scene later where he gets hurt, he gets shot, and he's taking forever to heal. Why? Why isn't he healing more quickly? I mean, he healed very, very quickly in the beginning when he had this horrific lightning burn because he got electrocuted. Why can he heal very quickly from that? But then in other parts of the movie, he's taken longer to heal, or he can't heal, and that made no sense to me. Also, the changes that were made with the character of Kara. Now, when I saw the trailer for this, I did specifically remark on the Supergirl character that I was not impressed with her in there because she's not the Supergirl that we're familiar with. I do believe she's playing the same Supergirl we're supposed to know. You know, the Supergirl from the Supergirl movie. But she's not the same Supergirl. She's older than Clark or Kal-El. And the stuff that they did with her in here, I thought was ridiculous. And I'll explain what I mean. So, you know, in the whole storyline of Kal-El, they send him out. Okay, so let's tie back to Man of Steel. They send him out with the Codex. He's got the Codex in him, which contains all the DNA and everything for rebuilding for rebuilding Krypton society again, or the Kryptonian people again, okay? In this movie, they've sent out infant Superman, but they sent out his cousin, who's older, as his protector. It's like, okay, all right, because he's a baby. So they send her out as a protector, even though she's comic, she's supposed to be younger anyway, she's older, whatever. But then they make it that instead of the baby having the Codex, she's got the Codex in her. So then what's the entire point of having the baby sent out in the first place? Why? Just eliminate the baby that's been sent out, because it makes no sense to have the baby being sent out and then the woman as the protector, but then find out that no, it was not even necessary to send the baby because the baby doesn't even have the Codex. The girl has the Codex. I felt like I was living in Terminator Dark Fate, where it was being repeated all over again, except just, oh, it's in this other person now. Anyway, that was kind of frustrating. And her performance in here, I'd seen some people compliment her performance. She was sorry, that's my dog jumping out of the chair. She was okay. She wasn't spectacular. I wasn't super impressed. I didn't like how she carried herself in the air when she flew. I didn't really care too much for the way she fought. Her acting was just it felt rather bland and meh. I was not super impressed with her performance. It wasn't craptastic. It wasn't the worst performance I've ever seen, but I didn't think she was like the shining light that some people I feel like that they felt like she was. I felt like she would just put in here just for the sake of having a drastically different Supergirl. While I could go along with that to an extent, like I said, with regard to, okay, she's being sent as a protector, when they went and flipped that whole thing on its head and made her be the one with the Codex, and then it was just like, well, that just makes no sense. Why even mention the baby? There were also some other things that didn't make any sense, like moments where she was able to be killed. Why? Why was she able to be killed? I get in the beginning when they get her and she's all scrawny and has no power, they've obviously put her in this dark place. She doesn't have exposure to the sun. She should still be able to have the power to break out of where she was, unless they probably had kryptonite around her. That's what I assumed. But then when she gets out, she has full power, but yet she's killed multiple times. How could she be killed? She's supposed to be Kryptonians aren't that I mean, like, isn't she supposed to be like the basic equivalent of Superman? How in the world is she being killed so easily? I didn't get that. Maybe I'm missing something. Another thing. There's some sort of power thing that Barry does with the cyclone, and then the other Barry just runs through it and does something through it. But I didn't get what the point of that was. That didn't seem to make any real significant difference to me. Whatever. Obviously, I'm missing something on that end, but that was aggravating. Another thing that was a little bit frustrating was they got a totally different actor to play his father. That was disappointing. I wish they could have gotten the same guy that showed up in the Justice League movie. Time compression. It felt like there was a bit too much time compression going on at the end. You have this slow and steady buildup of the narrative, which I liked. I actually liked the first half of it. Then when this big battle starts happening and our Barry has lost his powers and he needs to get his back, and then just is so amazing how it just magically works that he gets it back just when he needs it. And then they're fighting this battle, and then there's all this, we need to do this. Let's go and do this and do this and do this real quick. And let's turn back time again. And then they go and they turn back time multiple times. And it just felt like stuff was just so hectic and rushed and muddled and fragmented. Maybe that was the point because this was supposed to be all multiversey and everything. But it just, like, the last half of the movie or the last third of the movie felt like just this jumbled, it didn't flow as well as the first half of the film did. And so I found myself losing investment or losing my sense of feeling of investment in the characters when that sort of stuff was going on. Also, with the multiverse stuff, it felt really a bit heavy-handed when it came to some of the callbacks. Certain things that were thrown in there while it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh, I see what you did there. That's cool. Oh, that's nice. But it felt like that it was only put there for the sake of striking those emotional chords with you and just for the hell of it. And so it just didn't feel substantial, like, let's say, how No Way Home felt with the 3 Peter Parkers and all the different villains. For some reason, that just worked so much better than the way they did that sort of thing here. Now, there is something funny that happens at the very end, the very last scene, not the post-credit scene, but the very last scene leaves you kind of with a thought of, oh my, where's this going to go? And I have no idea, because I've heard they're not going to do any more with this, but the ending kind of makes you wonder. So I really have no clue. Yeah, that's my muddled analysis of The Flash. It's unfortunate that they couldn't have done a more solid job with this thing because I felt like it had potential. I had heard in a video that I was listening to before I started filming this review that there had apparently been multiple reshoots going on, and it was like they just didn't know where it was going to go. And that sort of kind of feels like it, especially as things move along at the end. There was something that I had written down as a con. When he ends up in this particular time frame and then he has to help Newberry get his powers, I was thinking to myself, wow, that's just super convenient, isn't it? That he ends up exactly the right day for this. Well, that was explained later, so that's not really a con anymore. But something that I did like that they did with this other character in here, I thought it was going to be the exact same character that was in the Flashpoint Paradox. He sort of kind of is, but not exactly. But I like what they did with him. I like who they made him. And you'll know what I mean when you get to that part. Anyway, I don't think I have much more to say. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't the worst comic book movie I've seen, but it certainly doesn't rank up there with the best. I just feel like in the hands of someone like Zack Snyder, we would have gotten something that felt a little bit more weighty. Though there were moments in here that were certainly weighty, it's not something that stuck around throughout the entirety of it. It's here and there. I mean, that's kind of the core of it, because the whole point of him doing what he did was because of his mother. So yes, that foundation is there, but it often seems to be forgotten in the midst of some of the goofiness and the comedy and the battles and stuff. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen what Zack Snyder could have done with this material. Anyway, it's weird, I feel kind of meh about it, even though there were parts that I did really enjoy. I'm glad I didn't despise it, but going into this, I had been hearing so much positive buzz before all the reviews came out. And then as the reviews were coming out, it was like, okay, so this positive buzz we heard before the movie, like when the movie was screening earlier for earlier audiences, that was either misleading or It was just a lot of excitement because they were seeing advanced screenings, which does tend to happen sometimes. Advanced screenings often generate a little bit more excitement or positive reception than when the film actually comes out to the rest of the world. Anyway, yeah, a highlight of this film are the two berries and the emotional aspect of his relationship with his mother. I did really like those parts of it. And yeah, because of that, I definitely don't regret watching this film. I'm not going to, completely pile on it as the worst ever. As I've already said, it's not the worst ever. It just does feel like there was some wasted potential here. And that's unfortunate. I think that's probably going to affect its ability to perform at the box office, in addition to, the whole thing with Ezra Miller. That's it. So I'm going to wrap this up and we'll see you guys later. Adios.